One of the great voices in the history of KROQ with the band Soundgarden and Audioslave and his solo works. And it's always a pleasure to have him back on the Kevin and Bean Show. Our friend Chris Cornell joins us in studio right now. Hey, Chris.
Hey, thank you.
Sorry, it's butt early, man. We appreciate you being here. How you been?
Pretty good, actually.
How early is butt early?
About now.
Okay. All right.
This is it.
So, Chris, you're here today for a number of reasons. A, I'm sure you just missed us. But B, Superunknown is 20 now. Does that blow your mind that it's been 20 years since you guys were making that album?
I kind of think of Superunknown as later period Soundgarden. And
right, because that was already like your fourth album or something.
Well, we had been a band for 10 years when we made that album, which a lot of bands, that's their entire lifespan.
Yeah, true. If they're lucky.
Yeah, if they're lucky.
Yeah.
So I thought of that as like, that was kind of our reinvention period of, wow, we've been a band this long and we've made a lot of records and now, we're kind of expanding on it. So for that to be 20, yeah.
Does it surprise you as a band who's been together for 10 years to all of a sudden have an album like that go crazy?
It was a confusing time, I think, in like commercial music, and we actually had a lot to do with helping create that confusion. But it was a surprise, I think, that it was as big as it was.
9 million copies sold, if I remember correctly, around the world.
Something like that. Yeah, 8 or 9, something. And it was actually on the heels of Nirvana and Pearl Jam having records that were even bigger. So in a sense, it wasn't like we knew it was possible.
Right.
But still, for Soundgarden in a world that even then, at radio and MTV was kind of hit song driven, and we didn't necessarily have those. And Black Hole Sun, for example, was a surprise when I think about it lyrically, especially that became a hit song. So I think we were fortunate in that we made this album that was kind of redefining the band and pushing the boundaries right at the time when people we had everyone's attention.
Yeah, everyone was looking for that.
So they listened to it.
Yeah.
And in that way, I think we were very fortunate.
It's so funny to hear you say that it didn't have hit singles because obviously we're skewed on this because we were working at KROQ. We played Fell on Black Days and we played, Black Hole Sun and we played Spoon Man and we played all those songs. It seems like 1 million times each. The Day I Tried to Live, we played. I mean, I can't imagine those songs weren't hits, but I guess you're right in the context of pop radio. Obviously, they weren't.
I think that you turned them into hits, but I don't know that we thought that's what they were or going into it.
Right. You weren't expecting them to be as successful as they were, certainly.
No. Right? Like Fell on Black Days is in 6/8. It's this weird time signature. You didn't hear hit rock songs that weren't like straight 4, kind of 4 on the floor.
Right.
And so, but that's also what was really satisfying about it. Was, wow, we can actually have a hit radio song where we didn't follow anything even close to a standard formula.
This 20th anniversary release of Superunknown that we're talking about is going to be available everywhere on Tuesday, June 3rd, and it's everything. I mean, look, if you like Soundgarden, I mean, it's ridiculous how much stuff you guys hung on to. Demos, rehearsals, live appearances, B-sides. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, who was your archivist that you have all of this?
Nobody. Kim is probably the closest thing to someone that you can bank on has stuff, but there was a lot of digging for this.
I was going to ask, when you went to put this together, where do you go? How do you?
You just sort of throw a net out there, like who has
right.
what, and
because some songs you would
engineers, producers. Band members, everybody just kind of saying, well, there's this and there's that. And Kim's a big part of kind of putting that together, I think, in terms of kind of knowing in his catalog brain what's out there and saying, well, there's this and there's that. And if he didn't have it, he knew that it was there and someone would go find it.
How much, if you can remember specifically about Superunknown, but I guess this is a question for all of the years of Soundgarden, how much do the songs change from the time you or somebody brings it in as a demo and then it gets worked over with the band before it gets recorded? Do a lot of times do they transition into completely different songs than how they started out?
They can, yeah. It depends on the song. And it depends on someone else's willingness to kind of try to alter it a little bit. But some songs will go through like dramatic reinventions from like the initial idea. I think I did an initial demo of the song like Suicide that's on Superunknown, and it essentially got vetoed.
Everybody just said nope.
Yeah, but it was a nope with we like it, but there's things about it, or it was just sort of an overall it's not working.
Does that hurt your feelings at the time?
Well, yeah, I think everybody's sensitive, to that. It's not so much a hurt your feelings, but because we've always been pretty supportive of each other creatively, but it's disappointment. But at the same time, I think that's an important aspect of a band. I think that's what makes you sound like who you are. Is that, and also it's in a way a secure feeling, because most of the songs that were actually vetoed that didn't become Soundgarden songs for me, when I go back and listen to them, I one after the other, I'm thinking, oh, thank God.
This is a good thing. This is definitely a good thing.
What was I thinking?
This is the voice of Chris Cornell here on the Kevin and Bean Show. You brought up Like Suicide. We pulled a little piece of that from this Superunknown 20th anniversary reissue package. This is not the demo version, but this is the acoustic version. I guess this is just you and guitar singing a little bit of it before the band got in and added their part. And you'll get I think this will be a great example of why this reissue is so awesome, because you get a chance to hear these songs in their early days. Listen up. That sounds cool. Yeah. You're showing off now, man. And then
showing off then.
And then the version we know from the album with the band on. It's a completely different thing. It's so cool to have this little piece of history in our hands. Comes out on June 3rd. Chris Cornell is here. We'll talk more with Soundgarden when we return right after this on KROQ. Chris Cornell in studio with us here on the Kevin and Bean Show, talking about Soundgarden and the Superunknown 20th anniversary re-release. Available at retailers everywhere, in store, and for download on June 3rd. Couple of different versions you can get. You can get a 2-CD version. You can get the big box set, which is 5 discs. And you guys also put out something for Record Store Day, which was all the singles on vinyl. Are you a vinyl guy yourself, Chris?
I actually still have all the vinyl I think I ever had. And right now it's in storage.
That's heavy when it comes to moving, by the way. The vinyl is so much heavier than any other kind of format.
That's why it's still in storage.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I remember in, I don't know, probably from the time I moved out of my mom's house, which I was 17. I think I moved every 6 months for like the next 11 years. And
wow.
I don't think I had much in the way of furniture. I had a bed and I had the crates of vinyl. And I remember that being a hassle, especially because you can't just put vinyl in the backseat of your car on a hot day.
Right.
So it was a sensitive thing. But yeah, I have a lot of stuff. And I bought a lot of import. Like I bought Dirty Deeds by AC/DC in the import section of Tower Records, because when it came out, and I'm a kid, this is still 70s, I think, they didn't release that record at first in the U.S., so you had to buy it as an import.
Is that right?
Yeah, and I remember it was like $13, which then was all the money I had.
Yeah.
It was like if you spent $150.
That was absurd, yeah.
And I still have it.
And by the way, totally worth every penny you spent for it, too.
Absolutely. And well, yeah, it probably was listening to that record influenced a lot. I also have like 4 copies of Bridge of Sighs, though I never bought it. And the reason why is because all the bands I had rehearsed at my house. So guitar players would bring in Bridge of Sighs so you could learn songs on it and then leave it. And one day I was going through and I was like, oh, Bridge of Sighs, where'd I get that? And then, another one. Where'd I get that? Oh, another one. I don't think I've even ever listened to it, but I got it.
It may be time to pare that down a little bit.
Yeah, maybe I'll sell a couple, eBay a couple. I have to figure out which one's in the best shape.
I'm always curious, when you bring up AC/DC or Robin Trower as influences, since you're Chris Cornell, you have the ability to meet these people, reach these people, hang out with these people. Do you ever do that?
I've never met anyone in AC/DC. But I think they stay away from me because I'm 6'2.5".
And they're so tiny with their little shorts.
Guys. Yeah, exactly.
They don't look like midgets.
I've never met Prince either. I did see Prince at the Beverly Hills Hotel once though, and it was comical because I was walking down the hall sort of towards where his room was, and he had opened the door and was trying to push his room service cart out. And he was sort of struggling with it a little bit. And he had
It's too heavy for him?
I think maybe.
Because he's tiny.
And he had no shirt on, and he had a purple headband holding his hair back. And it was awesome because he looked, like Prince, like he looked like he was on stage, but he was just pushing the cart out. And he did that thing that you do when you have no shirt on and you're pushing a cart out. You don't want to see another human being. And he saw me, and he just started wrestling it out there and slammed the door because he didn't want to see me.
That's so much better than meeting him, by the way.
Yeah,
That's
it's
a
more
phenomenal
satisfying.
story.
It's a much funner story to tell.
Now, you were telling us during the break that Soundgarden's going to be out all summer. You're playing a lot of gigs, including Hyde Park in London in the summer. And you're playing with Black Sabbath. Now, you know Ozzy?
I've met him a few times, yeah. He's a great guy, and he's always been
Could you do
big
what
supporter.
he does at his age, do you think? Do you think you'll be able to do what he's doing at his age?
I'm not. I don't think so in the way that he does it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 80 years from now. I mean, he's really old, but you got to give him credit for being out there, man.
Audioslave played with the original members' version of Black Sabbath a few years ago at a festival in Germany, and we were knocked over by him. And Ozzy's he's very sort of quiet and relaxed at this point, and when he goes on stage, I don't know where he gets that from.
Right.
But I would say the same thing about, like, when I saw Scorsese's Shine a Light on the Rolling Stones, and I was on tour when I saw that, and was watching a DVD kind of in the middle of the night, and I just played a show. And then I'm watching Mick Jagger, who by then was already mid-60s, right? Late 60s.
Or close to 70 even when
Yeah.
that came out, because I think he's like 73 now or something.
And thinking, I can't do that now. I don't
Depress
do
you a
that.
little bit?
I don't even try to do that.
No, he's unbelievable. I saw the Stones last year at the Hyde Park show. You're playing this year's version. I saw them last year, the British Summertime show, and I was exhausted watching the show. I couldn't imagine how those guys are able to get up there and do it. It's astonishing.
Yeah. And
He's a great grandfather now, by the way.
Really?
Mick Jagger,
grandfather.
Great grandfather. You have a local show coming up at the Hollywood Bowl with 9 Inch Nails. Is this the only date you two are doing together, or are you guys going out for a bunch?
We have a whole summer tour together.
Who goes first?
A band called the Death Grips goes first, and then us, and then 9 Inch Nails, and it's billed as a co-headlining tour. But I sort of view it as a package tour that Soundgarden did. We did several of those early on in our career, where it's a group of bands, like 3 bands, where they're not from the same genre, they're not from the same place. So whoever's going to these shows is seeing 3 bands that essentially, in terms of genre, have nothing to do with each other, but kind of makes sense as a package.
Right.
And if you're a fan of any of the 3, you may become a fan of the other 2, and that's something that I'm really happy that we're doing. I want this to kind of be one of those tours where people talk about it in 10 years.
You like playing in
remember
front
that tour.
of you like playing in front of people who may not necessarily be there for you first.
I think there's always something to that it brings out a different side to you. I don't think being comfortable on stage in the world of rock and roll is really necessarily the best thing. I think that some of that raw energy comes out of you because you have a fish out of water feeling.
A little challenge more than...
Yeah, you're under a microscope and you react weird, and that's how you ended up on stage in the first place. At some point you had to decide that was the way you were going to deal with life. And I also feel like there's a satisfaction you get out of that when you feel like we turned those guys around. We didn't have them in the beginning, but we turned them around. That's always like the most satisfying, I think, in terms of a live show.
Well, you certainly get your money's worth with that, Bill. You mentioned the Death Grips opening and then Soundgarden and Nine Inch Nails. That's all at the Hollywood Bowl. That's coming up on August the 25th. Tickets available right now through Ticketmaster.com. You had 16 years between the last two Soundgarden albums, and the last one, King Animal, came out in November of 2012. So that means it's only been a couple, but are you talking about making another one?
Yeah, I think that at this point, it's one of those things that's just going to start to naturally happen. It's a little bit of a cycle now because we're doing promotional tours and we haven't been in a studio writing, but because everyone brings song ideas in, it goes from 0 to 60 really fast. All of a sudden, everyone will have two things.
So you pick up where you sort of left off?
And that's 8 songs that you have to work on, and already you're well into making an album, and that could happen tomorrow. So,
is it more difficult, less difficult, the same? Seems like a difficult process.
It's always a challenge, I think. There's two ways to look at it, and one is when you've had a successful career and you've made a lot of records that you feel really good about, you can do it.
Right.
We've done this many times in a row and through all different situations. But the other side of it is that we've made a lot of albums. So, how do you make the next one? And what is your reason for making it? You've got to do something else.
Other than just repeating what you've already done.
Yeah, we've always got to reach. But having said that, we always naturally do that anyway. So
we always talk to musicians who say occasionally, you go into the studio and you go, I don't know that I can do this again. That's behind you?
I think that's behind me. Yeah, I think that I always have an inner voice though that is saying, "You're an idiot. You're an asshole. Are you kidding me? What?
We've said those same things about you, Chris.
Yes. Yeah. You guys can come, especially when I start tracking vocals. Wait till there's 2 notes that come out, and then really, really.
Let me ask you this in our remaining moments here with Chris Cornell. Do you ever write music just for the sheer joy of it without having in mind, hey, one day this is going to be a record?
Yes. Spoon Man, for example, is that.
Really?
Really?
Yep. The song Seasons is that.
Those were just for fun, for your pleasure.
Mm-hmm. Those were just...
You weren't thinking solo, you weren't thinking band, you weren't thinking anything. Just,
no.
I want to write it.
Yeah. When Soundgarden formed, I didn't play instruments other than the drums. I was the original drummer. And it was this kind of post-punk indie world of anything goes, which meant to me, I can pick up a guitar even though I don't know how to play it, and anything that comes out of it is valid. So I never actually learned to play. I just sort of picked it up to contribute to songwriting. And the atmosphere in the band was very supportive of stuff that I wrote right away, while still kind of being a chimpanzee on the guitar. I didn't know what I was doing. And that's sort of where it came from. So it was always this experimental mood and this experimental feeling in terms of approaching songwriting and even making records.
You said supportive. Every once in a while, somebody's got to go, seriously, try again.
Well, I think that happens in every band. I think that there are components that include, each individual member has an idea or an attitude about what a Soundgarden song should sound like. And I'm sure that's similar with any other band. And those are all different opinions, really. They're all different visions. And what makes what Soundgarden sounds like is the collection of those things. And I think us, for example, making an album after 15 years, starting to write it, I realized that more then than I'd ever realized it before. Because I think the first song I wrote lyrics to and a melody to was to a demo that Matt brought in. And as I started writing lyrics and singing to it, it occurred to me that he's the only guy I write like that with, not even close to anything else. And then that happened with Ben's ideas and Kim's. And then writing my own songs by myself for Soundgarden, I'm writing in a different way. I'm writing specifically for that mood. And what I imagine this band is always sounding like, or pushing the boundaries of what this band sounds like in a way that's appropriate for this band. And then it occurred to me that chemistry aspect is the most important thing.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that process with it. It's always so interesting for us to kind of get inside how the records are made. We love that. And if you love Soundgarden, Superunknown 20th anniversary release is something you got to pick up June 3rd. It's got demos and acoustic versions and live versions and rehearsals. I mean, it's frankly more Soundgarden than you ever really need.
Yeah, probably.
And you can see him in concert with 9 Inch Nails at the Hollywood Bowl. That show is Monday, August 25th. Tickets available right now through Ticketmaster.com. So great of you to stop by, Chris. Always enjoyable.
Thank you.